Right, recap then. We've barely started and we've had a break, so we've forgot what we've done. But vision is, what are the three phrases? Knowing Jesus, showing Jesus, sharing Jesus. Relevant for all ages, our vicar says. And we need to put that to the test for the rest of this afternoon, really, because we're here as youth and children's helpers, volunteers, leaders. And if the vision doesn't fit, then it's no good. But part of what we're going to do is try to break it down and say, well, what does that mean for our 3-year-olds? What does it mean for our 13-year-olds? What does it mean for all the different ages? And I want us to, we had the right things now. Dream for our different ages, because I believe that when you dream for children and when you dream for young people, you open up doors that were closed before. I don't know about you, but I can think back to a few people in my past that have kind of believed in me and even dreamed for me, helped me to dream beyond my own sort of expectations in life. And I remember one lady, I'll give you a name because she needs credit, Pam Woodham. If you ever meet Pam, she's lovely. She used to be my 7 to 11-year-old leader in our little church group. Grew up in a Baptist church, a little group, about 20 or so of us. And I distinctly remember in those meetings being given the chance and being encouraged to do bits of the meeting. Even at that age, it was part of the normal running of the meeting that somebody would choose a song. It was quite a formal setup in my day. But you'd have, 3 people would be choosing a song. You were allowed to stand up and announce your song and say why you'd chosen it. Somebody would do a little reading, somebody could do a little talk. It was like a little mini church service. It wasn't like that every week, but that was part of my memory of the children's group that we belonged to. And I remember being encouraged to lead things and then do talks and do more talks. And I just thought, I've got Pam Woodham to blame for what I'm doing today. in many ways, in many important ways, I'm sure that my own childhood has shaped because people like Pam Woodham believed in me and saw something and encouraged and opened up doors. She dreamed for me in some ways and opened up doors that weren't really there before. And I've pursued it ever since, really, and felt that God was speaking through her. So I wonder if you can think for the children and young people that are in the groups that you connect with here, however old they are, and think, I wonder what God has in store for Louis, for Brandon, for Joshua, for John, for Maisie, for the people that we know in our groups. I wonder what God has in store for them. Where's he going to take them? Now, we don't necessarily know. Sometimes God gives us things that we think, I'm going to keep praying this for you because I see this in you. And you might not even tell them for a while. But I believe that starting to dream for children and young people can be a very powerful process. So I want you, if there's a bit of paper in front of you, to think of maybe 1 or 2 people that you'll find helpful to concentrate on and dream a little. Now, another language for dreaming is prayer. It's very similar. When you dream for somebody, you open up the possibilities for them. It becomes a prayer. So spend a minute or 2 just thinking and praying effectively for some of the children that you can think of. It could be general things, or it could be specific things. But dream. What might happen? What could God do in the lives of these children? Does that make sense? Yeah. Have I said it enough? Right, let's do it. You can chat to an neighbour if you need support. And we will ask 1 or 2 just to share back 1 or 2 thoughts, some dreams. Right, I'll pull time in your conversations and your thoughts, whether you've written things down, whether you've been chatting or whether you've been praying. Maybe 1 or 2 can share back some. You don't have to name names if you don't want to. I don't want to break any prayer confidences that you have for certain children. But what kind of things are we imagining, praying?
Well, can I just It must be 2 years since now we started the town again. And 2 weeks since, or 3 weeks since, I watched two of them just totally, I watched them change. Mike took a workshop for a week at Rossington and then invited us to go and see how they'd done. And they filmed it and they acted this reenactment after 5 days of being together with total strangers. And one was Emily and one was Brandon. I'm sure they won't let me tell you what it was. And those two, 2 years ago, in the tower gang, was the most two shyest members of our tower gang. And that night, they came out in beams. And it wasn't just the acting and what how they performed, but the face and the delivery of what they had to say, delivered 1,000 things. As I say, 3 weeks later, I'm still excited at what they did. It was a hard journey for me to get there because I had to phone Michael, I saw Tommy, who hadn't even got there. But I think we were meant to get there, me and Margaret, to see that deliverance.
So there's answers to prayer there, but there's also prayer for the future, isn't there? For those two, specifically, that their journey goes on in confidence and in ways that they can find to express themselves. Because I think that was the key for them, wasn't it? To find a medium, the filmmaking, a method that they could connect with. But there's also a prayer there, isn't there, for other similar young people who have low confidence, low self-esteem, which a lot of our young people have, I think, in today's world. And it is a case of, let's pray for opportunities that these young people can connect with and come alive, because they came alive, didn't they, through that project in ways that, was really encouraging. Anything?
I'm just thinking, about young saints. I mean, there's quite a few children coming to young saints, and I'm not kidding. The majority of them children, they've got so much confidence. When we have prayer times, open time. This Tyler, I'll mention names, Tyler and Jade Tyler. And this, if they're encouraged, keep encouraging them, pray for them. And what they've been through in their little lives, and to see how they react when they come to young saints, it's amazing. We just get blown away. It's all about encouraging them, praying.
So I want, again, another journey, a sense of journey, isn't it? From who they are, from their own backgrounds that you're aware of as leaders, aren't you? You pick up kids' stories, and sometimes we know personally their backgrounds, and we can pray into that, and we can see young people growing. And kids who already have that confidence, we just said about two that lack confidence. Sometimes the confidence of childhood dips at young people age, doesn't it? That kind of getting on to teenagers, and suddenly you turn in a little bit and do a lot of internal "who am I" work. But we pray that the confidence of some of these.
I know they don't necessarily come to church, but they do. They are in this environment when they come to young saints, and it is. We get blown away with how they are. A little chat. Praying. Just in a prayer circle. Just when you're thinking, wow, can I pray?
So our own faith is challenged, isn't it? We're stretched ourselves. But let's let those stories stretch us further and say, where could they go to next? Let's not just be satisfied with being amazed at our children or our young people and think, wow, they've got it, that's great. Let's think, well, where next for these? Where's the next amazing step? It may be further than our own personal experience. It might be a God dream that he gives you and think, this is where I'm going to take you. Stephen said about, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for hope in the future. And you think, yes, how can we keep praying for these kids outside the main church, I should say outside the church family, because they are part of our family in our groups, but outside of the faith circles that we see more clearly, that we pray that confidence would grow in that way. Anything else?
Something about the two particular ones I've wrote down, Grace.
Pardon?
The ones I've wrote down, they're both brought the siblings in as well as the young saints. They've both got siblings coming to young saints as well, so it's spreading into the family.
And another prayer out of that is that our young people and children invite their friends, invite their family members, invite. So let's use these stories to push our prayers further, because I think that helps us to aim for something that that we haven't got yet. You know, I think sometimes we can think, great, you know, this is happening, we love it, hearing encouraging stories, but use those stories for fuel to push your prayers further so we can see more and more of what God's doing. Anyway, Debbie.
I've got Amber on my heart because I see her coming, I don't know if it's because of my age, but I see her coming with a grandmother. And I think about her parents don't come to church. I mean, I don't know before it was a while, but and I think about nurturing children like that who, I don't know, whose mums and dads don't come, and wanting them to know Jesus as a friend, as their friend now, so that they're sort of rooted in Him. And as they get to teenagers, they won't sort of wander off. I was thinking, I used to go to church on my own as a kid, and my mum didn't go with them. Although I've been brought up to get the red Bibles and stuff, and my auntie used to come here when I was a kid. We used to live in Africa, and I moved to school when I was about 6. But I can't remember why, but I used to spend up to 8 days on my own then. And my mum came back to church later in life, you know. But I think because I knew that Jesus was my friend and I loved Him, I took myself off to church. But so I'm just thinking of Amber. But no, she wasn't out because her mum and dad were coming. You know.
It's like the two girls that sit at the back. I never remember the names.
Georgia
Georgia
and Lola.
and Lola. You know, we want to see Amber as a Georgia and a Lola in however many years' time, still coming, still engaging. Yeah.
And they chose to come because, I mean, their families go to the church, I don't know where, but they chose to come somewhere else.
So again, there's all kinds of prayers that we can attach to that. Prayers for those individuals, that they have a strength of faith that will hold them. You know, there's so many distractions, aren't there, in the world. You just think, hold them, God, and help us to hold them. Help us to help them belong to the family here and feel loved and encouraged. And in a way, you know, we're the answer to our own prayers there, aren't we? Very easily we can pray for that, and then we know we've got to go and do our bit to encourage and to inspire them.
Another one who encourages me is Ella. Ella's a delight. Ella's, what's the mum? Becky. And Ella, she wants to come, and she says, I want to go to church, I enjoy it at church, it's so fun. And she's the one, and I pray for her that she's the one that brings Jesus into her family as a child, because they are coming for baptism, and I believe in that's sort of part why they're coming. But Ella does ask regular, I want to go, and that came through like first steps as well. She started with first steps and loved that, and then wants to come to Sunday school. It's great.
And there's lots of biblical support in children leading the way, if you like. You know, there's a whole study there, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And it's the way often God, you know, embarrasses the next generation into, gosh, even my children are alive in a way that I've never experienced. And it's like, come on, you know, see it in your children's eyes.
I long for the day when our adults are jealous of our children. I really long for the day when the adults in the church are saying, do you know what? I want the sort of faith that he's in. And they're pointing the kids at the front. That's what I would really... Not that I want our adults to be so far behind the kids, but I want our kids to be so far ahead of the adults. There were two names that came to me, and it was Louis and James. Louis spoke more to me at New Wine than I think he's ever spoken to me throughout the rest of the time I've known him. And he has this beautifully precise way of talking. Stephen. And you know there's a really, really good question coming. And I just had this vision of Louis in years to come using that wonderful voice to explain the answers that other people give. You know, to be someone who helps people to understand what God's about. And the other one was James. I just laugh every time I see James because I think he's fantastic. I don't know how many of you know Gav Calver, Clive Calver's son, who heads, is it YMO, Youth for the Mission or Youth for Christ? He's a nutter. He's an absolute head case, but he is so passionate about Jesus. I just get excited about my faith by listening to Gav. And actually, the vision of James was he's going to be Gav Calver. He's going to be another Gav Calver. He's going to be Tigger in a little bit.
You said this morning when I was praying for children, I'm leading as well.
Yes.
And if you want any more props for prayer,
Absolutely. He's just
self-prophecy.
He's completely unashamed. To be honest with you, I know you were really embarrassed when he said, "Pray for us." I was like, kid, I'm going to pray for the next 10 minutes for you. You know, that sense of being jealous of what our kids have got. And, you know, when you said about Tana saying, can I pray? I don't recall the last time that happened in a prayer meeting with others. And don't recall the last... I'll pray. Oh, everybody else has gone, I suppose I better. And I know people pray in different ways, and people pray about and the rest of it, but just, I'd love to have a prayer meeting where actually we're falling over ourselves to pray, like the kids. I know that's what we should be able to stop from the kids. But.
Yeah. Well, this morning, as well, was Olivia and Maisie making on his hypnosis. They're expressing themselves, it's playing, and over there,
it's fantastic.
And I think the girls, I feel like I want to help them with the rhythms, because they're not very good, but I'm not very good at it. But just when the music comes on and they're jumping and dancing, and they're expressing themselves to what they're hearing, aren't they? And they feel confident and able enough to go and jump around over there. And I just think, I looked at this and I just think, yeah, this is what it should be like them, because they're enjoying it and they enjoy it here. You know,
it's a really encouragement. I see the flags over there sometimes, but with those little ones just up from where we are in the music group, it's really, and then you see it spinning round.
I walked down to the piano and there was something, and it's on his head, and he worries at me. One man on his head, it's kind of waving.
When Maurice stood up tonight and said, and I'm going to start with 3 songs, Maurice went, 3 songs?
I don't think I realise that both me and Margaret have got new neighbours. He's 25 and she's 21, bless her. And he plays rugby for Adwick. And his dad told him that I played rugby for Adwick years ago. And so we had a chat the other day. And I always remember my dream in youth service, way back in the 60s. I got 2 of the biggest roles, sorry Maurice, in the youth club at the time. One called Jimmy Carrington and one called Alan Winfrey. But this one next door to us, he says, he's coming on smashing now. He said, we've got this old man coaching us called Alan Winfrey. I said, oh, thanks. I said, that makes me an old man because he's one of my youth club members. But what I'm saying to you, when he was 14, 15, there were the parents' biggest roles in Skeller. And so I made one on treasurer and one on secretary, made to be accountable. The best thing I ever did. But when I heard this news, to me it was brilliant news, because it showed that they'd moved on. They were capable of leading a group of adults now, not young people. It made me quite excited on day this week.
I mean, I don't know about you, but these stories help me to remind myself what we're doing this for. And I know in youth and children's work it's quite easy to slip into that kind of teacher role and feel that we're there to teach the children the faith in whatever way we do that. And we're trying to do that in creative ways and fun ways, but ultimately we're wanting to teach them. And yet church family is, there's teaching, but there's learning. We've got so much to learn from these the little ones, the medium ones, the bigger lamps that, cause the trouble. There's stuff, I'm not looking at your I heard your conversation before we started about somebody we love. But we've got, I don't know if you struggle at all thinking actually you're in a teaching role, but I'd really encourage you to, as we go on through this afternoon, to think, I'm not just here to teach, but I'm here to share what I've got, and I'm here to learn what I can, and I'm here to walk with these little ones. And together we'll go on all kinds of adventures with God, and we'll discover things together. Some of my most precious memories of my own sort of youth and children's work is on my knees at a little table doing craft with kids and just chatting and finding out what they've been up to and what their thoughts are about the craft that we're doing, and what do they think of Moses when he stood up to Pharaoh, or what did he think of David, before Goliath, and what do you think that was like? Oh, I bet he was alright because he had God's, it's like, well, it's easy, isn't it? Just some of the things that you can hear around a craft table with kids, and if we're there as teachers, we'll miss that, There is a teaching element, but there has to be the two-way learning. I think church thrives, and youth and children's work thrives, when we can remind ourselves of these kind of stories, use those stories as our fuel for prayer and dreams, because that will then shape what we go on to do. When we're planning our terms and we're thinking, gosh, we've got to fill up all these slots with a title, and we've got the Young Saints programme, the Sunday School programme, the Tower Game programme, which is still blank and it starts Friday. We look at our blank programmes. It's a shared problem we have. We look at our programmes, and if we're not careful, we go into default and we think, what's the teaching themes for this term? And we put in our teaching. And yes, we need structure, but we need to remember when we're doing it that it's a very different experience that we're hoping for. Stephen's going to give us some more stuff to think about to help us shape what we are going to do and why we're going to do it in our different groups.
I just want to share one story that sort of moves on from that previous one. It's a personal story. At New Wine in 1992, I went with a family that I was lodging with at that stage. They had a little girl who was 7, a little boy who was 5, called Thomas. Oops, didn't turn my microphone on. New Wine in 1992, I went with the family I was lodging with, and there was a little boy called Thomas who was 5, a little girl called Rhiannon who was 7. Thomas came back from his group. Now, at this stage, my faith had begun to wake up, and I'll say a bit more about the journey later on. But I hadn't really taken on board what God could do here and now. It was a little while after then that God really got my attention with that, in terms of what the Holy Spirit can do, in terms of the gifts that God gives for here and now, not just the stuff in the past. And Thomas had come back from his group, and I'd spent a year living with his family. And as you all know, if you spend a year living with a 5-year-old, you can tell when they're lying. It's obvious most of the time. And Thomas was absolutely dreadful at lying. He couldn't lie to save his life. And he sat in his mum's lap, and he came back from his group. He said, "What happened tonight?" He said, "Well, we were praying, and the leaders were praying for us. And as I was praying, there was I saw fire coming on everybody's head, like a flame on everybody's head. And when it touched me, I fell over. And then God showed me this enormous angel, and he said, this angel's going to look after you, and he'll be with you, so that you know that I'm always with you." And I sat there and listened to this child, and I thought, do you know what? I've never heard God speak to me like that before. And I went into the rest of the week saying, "Lord, I want to hear, I want. And that's where my comments about being excited. I want our children to go places with Jesus that we haven't been yet. And then to excite us to do that. Thinking about that journey of faith, there are various people that have written various things to try and help us to understand that journey of faith. And I've tried to take one of those in particular, that's by a guy called Westerhoff. If you want to Google it later. I've tried to put it into pictures and words that I can get. But if you think about your journey of faith, your journey to faith, your journey through faith and onwards, try and see where these might have happened for you. And these aren't necessarily to do with particular ages. They're often particular stages of development in people's lives. Sometimes you can find adults at a stage that's very different to where a child might be further along this journey, but that sense of moving. And the starting point is what I call faith by experience. And that's that sense of faith when you're told all the Bible stories, and the parent is telling the child, Jesus loves you, Jesus cares for you, these are the stories about Jesus, this is what Jesus has done. And the child's faith is like an offshoot of the parent's faith. How many of you have got grandma's had spider plants? You know, those spider, and they set the runners off, and they grew along the runners. Well, I think it's a bit like that. It's spider plant faith. So it's part of the main plant, and this little one is growing up in it, and it looks exactly the same. Effectively, it's saying, I believe because you believe. So what my faith is yours. And it's about love, it's about security, it's about acceptance. Children who feel secure believing with their parents. To some extent, it's almost pre-conscious. They're not even aware that they have a nascent faith, an early faith, they just believe it. And to some extent, that's where some of the other, the childhood fairy tales we get from. So things like the Tooth Fairy and Father Christmas. And in one sense, we have to be very careful about how we use those stories, because it's very easy to tell kids a whole heap of stories and then say, when they grow a bit older, well, actually, do you know this lot? They're not the same as this lot. So absolutely. Absolutely. But I believe it to be faith by experience. It's that first stage of faith. And often, when you're talking the preschoolers or the early schoolers, that's the state they're often in, that their faith is based on somebody else's and based on that strong relationship. And so if children of that age haven't got a strong relationship with mum and dad, then they have to be able to build that strong relationship with somebody they can trust in order to have that sort of budding faith. And that's where it's important to build the relationships within a group, within somewhere like First Steps or Mums and Tots, so those children can share a faith that perhaps their parents and carers haven't got. The next stage of faith, according to Westerhoff, is what I call faith by copying. It's that sense of, I'm going to do the things that you do because I want to show that I'm trying to believe the thing, well, I'm trying, I believe the things that you believe. So it's not necessarily that conscious sense of, I know who God is and I know why I'm doing this, but you're doing this and I want to do that for him too, so I'll do that. And that's the point at which kids will put their hands in the air when everybody else put their hands in the air and worships, or they'll go wave flags because everybody else is waving flags, and they're doing it as an act of faith. It's not just copying, it's faith by copying. They're actually using their actions and the things that they do and the things they copy, the way they copy us praying, in order to feel like they belong. It's the one thing I've learned more than anything else is that the children who I see in the schools who are most damaged are the children who do not feel they have anywhere that they belong. They don't feel safe at home, they don't feel safe at school, and it's tragic. So that sense of belonging. So I believe because I want to belong. It's not quite right, it's more than that. The child's faith is corporate. They believe because everybody does, and together we can say these things to be true. They might not be able to articulate it on their own, but they can speak it when together. So it's like a shared faith. I believe because I believe because I belong, rather than because I want to belong. It might be a better way of describing it. The third stage, which is sometimes quite a challenge, is that previous phase. Sort of the perhaps 7 to 11, the sort of young saint age range, maybe. That sense of joining. I want to pray. I want to be a part of this. I want to be like you. That sense is sometimes that age range. Not always when I say these age ranges. You can find adults. I could show you a whole heap of adults whose faith is at that point. They believe only as part of a wider community. They haven't yet done that internal journey to move on to some of the later stages. The next stage is often the adolescent phase, and this is where it gets scary. Because what do teenagers do? They ask questions, or rather, they come up with answers that are the opposite of what you come up with. So they're immediately like opposition. I think this is wrong. Go on, prove it wrong. That's sort of. Actually, I haven't got a huge amount of experience at this stage because I haven't got any kids at this stage yet. And actually, I think I'm going to follow Max to Australia for the next 10 years and just avoid that whole stage completely. But it's faith by questioning. And actually, it looks sometimes like these kids are losing their faith. They go away and ask questions about other faiths. They read books by Dawkins and leave them in the lavatory for the vicar to find. That's Luke, yeah, absolutely. And he was quite smug when I commented on the Dawkins book that was in the loo when I was upstairs. Oh, did I leave it in there? Not necessarily. I'm not Christian. Prove it. But it's that searching out, it's that sense of them needing to, it's, without being too patronising, it's the baby bird. Unless the baby bird stretches its wings and flaps around and does all sorts of stuff, it will never learn to fly for itself. Mummy birds do not carry baby birds around, they're too heavy. They have to learn to fly by themselves, they have to go through that process of stretching and growing.
You teach them to swim, but then you have to take the young guys off and throw them in. And that's
Actually, it's the stage beyond that, where they go into the sea when you're not looking. And that's, for me this year, there were a couple of bits where Joshua went into the sea and we weren't watching him the whole time. And it's that next stage beyond. It's allowing them to go to places you haven't been in order to work things out. And it's a transitional stage. It's away from the faith that's based on other people. So that faith that's based on the infant faith, as it were, that faith that I believe because you believe, and it's even beyond that I believe because I belong. It's saying, actually, I need to work this out for myself. And that can be a very tricky phase, and that's the phase I think most churches fluff, which is why the kids leave. Because immediately the kids start asking questions and you say, actually, you're wrong. And they're like, fine. What does that end? And we need to, I think that's one of the key things. And again, I see lots of adults who get lost in that faith. Because they want to ask questions about faith and they're thinking, I can't ask the vicar that, they'll throw me out. I won't ask you to put your hands up if you thought something like that at some point. I know I have on my journey of faith through to this point. So that third stage is really important, that sense of searching. Now, just as we're going through this, I want you again to be thinking about some of the children you're working with and thinking about how some of these things are working out for them and realising it's all part of that journey. We're not saying that the first stage children haven't got a faith. They have. They've got the faith that they can have when they're tiny. And it's a valid faith and it's a real faith, and we need to value and enthuse and encourage that faith at that age, knowing it's like that. Not saying, well, do you know what? When you're a grown-up, you believe properly. They believe properly now. At that young age or at that intermediate age, the teenagers who ask questions believe properly. I believe, but I want to think it through my way. I love the bits that I found on the internet, by the way. I do wonder whether we're going to end up with people all saints that look like that. And actually, that guy looks very like me, so I'm really worried here. Yeah. But it's important that we create a space where kids like Ben and kids like Joseph and kids like Emily and Brandon can feel free to ask some really awkward and bloody-minded questions that we don't necessarily have the answers to. And the last stage is it's faith by conviction. I believe. It's that sense of I've internalised it. Actually, my faith isn't what I do. My faith isn't who I know. My faith isn't who I'm with. My faith isn't what I belong to. My faith is owned. I know in my heart that Jesus is my friend and my Lord and my Saviour. And there are a dozen stages of faith beyond that. It's not that when you get to this point, it's like, pass me that halo, Lord. But that sense of journey that our kids go through, coming to that final stage, many of them, not until they get into their 20s, before they've really owned that faith themselves and it's come alive. That was my journey. My journey to faith, I started Sunday school, hearing Bible stories. And I heard stories about Jesus. It wasn't until I was 16 when I met him and had a real encounter with him and my life was transformed. And it wasn't until I was 18 where I went to a church where people actually behaved as if they believed in what Jesus said. And it wasn't until I was 22 that I was filled with the Holy Spirit and enabled by the witness of a 5-year-old boy at New Wine to actually say, Jesus, I want that too. My journey of faith. And now, I've got nothing against Bible stories. I tell them all the time. But if our Bible stories remain stories about Jesus, I don't think that's enough. Our Bible stories need to introduce our children to Jesus. Because if they don't, they'll never start on that journey. They'll never make that encounter. So I just want you to think for a minute. Okay, Jack.
I remember very little about Sunday school. I remember how they did races going through the race because they had 2 barrels of water that was colour blue and 2 rivers. But I remember nothing else. I know I was told lots and lots of stories, but it wasn't until I started going through youth group, 13, where instead of hearing stories about Jesus, there were leaders who knew Jesus and told me about Jesus instead of stories about him. It was that real, own personal experience stuff. And I long for our tangents to meet Jesus at that stage of faith that they're at, rather than to be told about him. I just want you to take just a minute, but we're running a little bit late, which is why Mike's been helpfully coughing in the front row. I just want you to think for a moment about your own... Sorry? About your own... I just want you to just take a couple of minutes, again, just to think about your own journey, where you are, where you were as a child, where you are now, where you want to be. I am not yet where I want to be in my journey with Jesus. I haven't arrived. Actually, the longer I go on, the more I realise is in front of me. And that used to depress me, and now it encourages me. I'll steal my own thunder. At the parish weekend, I'm going to be talking from Philippians. Setting us, I throw aside all the sin that so easily entangles, and I fix my eyes on Jesus to run the race that he set out for me. Look at the Olympics and stuff. I've still got a huge amount of race to run. What race have you run so far? Whereabouts are you? How do those things fit in with your own experience of coming to faith? And maybe some of those stages happened when you were much later on than some of our children. But I would love our children to have run the first part of that race while they're little, and then enjoy running that bit of the race, rather than spending time as adults running the early bits of the race. So I just want you to think for a minute about your race, your journey, where you are, where you're at, where you long to be. Are you excited about what lies beyond? So just a minute or two.
I think it's interesting actually, I don't know if everybody's seen it today, but David Weir won his 4th gold medal today at the marathon. And when he had his interview, he said, well, how does it feel? He said, I feel shocked I've actually got through the race. He said, because the first 5 to 6 miles, I wanted to die. I felt as I was dying. And I had to build a stand up and my earth up and my faith up to get to that end. And he was in the 21 mile to win the race, and he won the gold medal. But you must think what must have gone through his mind when he thought he was dying at 6 miles.
Well, others were plotting to try and win.
So I say, just take a minute, perhaps in your own head. Think about I'm very aware I do my processing out loud, and it's very easy to encourage lots of out loud processing, and I know there are people that do that inside their own heads. So I just want to give them a minute just to think. Can't think of anything. Okay, does anyone want to come back to any of the things that I've said in the last few minutes? Is there anything, any questions, any thoughts, anything that's wrong, anything you're thinking, I don't know. I think they're right.
That's
So
true.
it helps us to clarify what we're doing and what we're about, and we've laughed a bit about Luke, and he went through quite a rebellious stage, really, quite aggressive against Christ and Christianity. Helen, that as well, and I think he's round the corner, and since he's been back this time, you know, sort of realising, you know, he just loves us after all. But, you know, I just think it else to think about, because it, you know, I was brought up, you know, coming here to Sunday school and being over in the church, all having felt board lessons with, you know, with older teachers. But the people who were, you know, believed in Jesus and were Christian and you know, they cared, like saying, built those good relationships up. And there's been a lot of, like Alan was saying earlier about youth work history, and you know I was mum, well, dad particularly, I see part of our youth group as well. But you know, and it relates to that coming here was hard sometimes because it was people that talked as well about Jesus, but it weren't to ever away somewhere else on a Christian holiday at like 15. And I thought, wow, this is totally different to church. This is people, it's different, and that's where I feel the Holy Spirit away. And then other vicars that we've had, you know, they've had, some of them have helped encourage. But I think as teenagers as well, I look at my personal life, now for me, the questioning the times of rebellion, I think I'm not doing anymore, we're going to do this, that place. And it helps me sort of look back and think that's all quite normal. You know, and I think for our teenagers, it's just nurturing them and being there through those awkward times.
I think the other thing is it's quite interesting to look back and see where you were at these were at those stages of time you felt like those things, and recognising the people who have brought you further forward by being people who have the relationship with Jesus. When I look back, there are people who went Sunday school and there are people who have the real relationship with Jesus in our church, and actually to date it's the people who had the real relationships with Jesus now that I think back and think those are the people I want to go back and speak to again. And those are the
Our
people who
church, we're very now, we're quite open, and I do feel quite approachable. I think the people who work with young people are approachable. I remember coming back from my youth holiday and saying, why can't our church be like this? To the vicar, and he said, it will never be like that. And I was like, yeah.
I reserve the right.
And I used to say to my mum, I'm not going to Woodlands anymore. When I was young, it was boring. And she said, you can't change a place if you're not there.
Well, can I say something? As a new Christian, obviously, I've not been here very long. And if the church wasn't the way it is, there'd be no way I would say, because everybody has been so open and helpful and encouraging, especially Steph. And I just am so excited about all the things that there are to learn. And I need to grow in confidence and be bold, like they said in New Wine, to be able to teach our children at first steps. And for a bit to rub off in the playground and talk to the mums. And at this cafe, playground by themselves. So I just want to say thank you.
I'm so encouraged by Helen. Helen, after the first time we met was in church, and we had the baking from church, wasn't it? You know, opening our church to community things. Helen is, that's what happened. Helen came into church, and then from baby clearly being here, said, I'm going to come on a Sunday, and that's where it started, really, hasn't it? Our beautiful relationship. And Helen, in Sunday school today for the first time.
But I love that sense of us learning from our kids, you know, and for me it's a real moment of humility. Because I was getting to the point where my faith was going places, and I was getting the hang of this, and prayer triplet, and we were storming the gates of heaven in prayer, and then this little child, this 5-year-old, just blew me away with the story of an encounter with God that was beyond my experience. And actually, that's my dream, is actually that we would learn as much from our kids and their encounter with Jesus. He's the teacher, I'm not. Anything that this church family learns that's good and wholesome comes from him. And it comes from me, and I'll put my hand up and say thank you, Jesus, for using me. But it comes from him. He is the teacher of our children. We just need to make sure we don't get in the way, and that we introduce them to him. And then do you know what? They will surprise us with the things that they do. They will teach us. You teach me about enthusiasm and about perseverance and love, and you laugh so much. I'm not going to embarrass you, but you encourage me. When I stand here at the front, it must often feel to you like I'm the one sort of doing all the encouraging. No, as I look out, each of you encourages me, and I want that to be the same when you're leading your groups, whether they're groups of adults or groups of children. I want you to be looking and saying, do you know what? I want a faith like that. I want a faith like that. I want to be able to say that. I want to be able to pray like that. And we need to realise that actually we're on a journey together. I often think of a church family. Did you ever do church walks?
Yeah.
Where everybody went? And you ended up with the people at the front going, tally-ho, this is the way! And then you ended up with that sort of big group in the middle, sort of together. And yeah, well, we're not going at the same speed as him, but we'll go at our speed. And then you've got the people at the back, and there's always a couple at the back who carry the little kids. Do you remember that couple at the back who always carry the little kids, or the person whose legs hurt, and come on, and they really encourage us along. And we just all need to realise that none of us have arrived. We're all on that journey. The vicar hasn't arrived. God forbid. To be honest with you, as I say, the longer I run, the more I realise lies in front of me, the more excited I am about what lies in front of me. Yeah, I've got through my 6 miles. I've died. But there's a gold medal waiting for me at the finish line. Right, Mike. I'm going to shut up. It's my turn. Good.
So we've had vision. I find it helpful just to keep recapping where I've come from, because it is a journey through this afternoon. We've had the vision of the whole church, relevant to the youth and children's work. We've dreamed and we started to pray and think what could happen with our young people and children, where could they go to, what could God do in their lives, and hopefully that fuels our prayer life. But very helpfully now we've kind of looked at some theory which kind of explains, well, this is where your children are probably at in these different age groups. The little ones, well, they're not going to have necessarily a questioning faith, so that in your groups you're having to answer lots of questions. It's more experiential. It's have a wonderful time in God's house with God. Smile, have colour and music, because God's about creativity and all those things. And yet for the older ones, we know because of where they are at in their faith journey, there are more questions. So what happens in the older Sunday school and in Tower Gang will look very different from what happens in the younger groups. And that's where we're at now. We're thinking, well, what are the implications there? We've got the vision in our mind, we've got these prayers of hope that we want to see happen in the children and the young people. But what does it mean that we actually do? And I know in many cases everyone's planned now for this term, which is why we hoped to have this day a little while ago, if you remember, we had to cancel it and whatever. So we're at the beginning of the term, and I know clubs have started and are starting, and you've got your plans drawn up. But I hope in the next 15-20 minutes or so, some of our thinking might affect what we've already planned, or at least give us good fuel for future plans. Because bringing all this understanding together, our prayers and also our understanding of where they are in their faith journeys and where we are in our faith journeys, we need to ask the question, how do we do that we're doing? What are the best kind of activities to do in our groups that meet the fact that they're here in their faith? And we hope for this in their lives. So what are we going to do that meets those two requests? Do you see what I mean? Rather than just coming up with a program. I know sometimes my default is, well, I need a story, I need some games, and then I need to do this, and we're done. And if we're not careful, our default kind of stays a little bit detached from who we're working with and who we're praying for. So if we have prayers of boldness and confidence for some of our young people, then our programme should reflect the fact that give them a chance to say stuff, give them a chance to be heard for what they want to say, let their opinions be heard, make a safe environment where opinions aren't shot down and there's teasing and bullying. You know, that's what Tower Gang tries to look like sometimes. And if you want your younger ones, who are at this experiential level of faith, to experience God, well, what do? What activities are good? What stories do you use that help them to experience? How do you behave as leaders so that they would experience God's love? Do you smile lots? Do you have children near to you? Are you using friendly voices? You know, all this stuff is stuff that we can put into our programs to get us to where we hope that young people and children will grow into. So, do you see how it's joining up? And it's important. And I know some of you do it already, and for some of us it's like, oh yeah, we've not really done that for a while, I've forgotten that it's important. So what I want you to do, and you might need to move for this, is to sit next to somebody, at least somebody, who's working with the same kind of age group as you are. If you're already there, then that's fine. I don't necessarily need everyone to jump up and run around. And I know some people do different age groups, don't they? 1 or 2 different age groups. So just choose what age group you want to think about for a moment. Suddenly, the popular tables are
I'm going to head to the kitchen and get some coffee and tea, so I'll bring those to the table. That's fine, I'll bring it to the table.
Before you get stuck in, can I just give you a little bit of framework for this? So the purpose of your group, as Stephen said at the beginning, is kind of we're growing the church. It's a discipleship. But what does discipleship look like at all these different ages? What does a 3-year-old disciple look like? They can have a very valid faith, a wonderful saving faith, and they are on their journey. So what does that disciple look like? What do they need in order to grow? So have a think of, and you can go beyond this if you like, but here's a suggestion. Think of 2 key activities that are bang on right for your group, just as an example. Not just something that goes down really well with the kids, but that meets the fact of they're here in their faith. We would love them to be here. These are our dreams. And so here's a great activity that will help them to grow in that direction. So think of 2 key activities and maybe some of the reasons why they are key. Think of 2 stories from the Bible that are really, again, bang-on stories for your age group to learn from. So the lessons in those stories, the things that you can draw out of those stories are things that are spot on for children or for the young people that you're working with. Because the Bible is full of all kinds of stories, some of which I would say are inappropriate for children. And we've all done it. If you've worked in the Sunday school at all, you'll stumble across the stories and you'll think, well, we should do it because it's in the Bible, but how are we going to do this? So there are more appropriate stories and maybe less appropriate. So what would be the perfect story or 2 stories for the age group you work with? And again, a reason or 2 why. And lastly, if you've got time for this, what are 3 essential ingredients for your group? No, I don't. For example, when I say ingredients, I mean... For ingredients, I mean... Every session that we plan is made up of different kinds of activities, okay? So you might have a song, or you might have some drama, you might have a question time, a debate time, a video. So when I say ingredients, I mean kind of the elements of a group session. The kind of activities that you would put in to a group. So think of, again, sort of 3 types of activity, 3 ingredients that you would say, now if we did these 3 ingredients, more often than not, it would give us a good, healthy balance to the group that we're working with. Are there any questions?
Sure.
What's the statement?
The question is, could you shut up?
Please, don't get it, please.
That becomes a request.
They would be. Are you up for the question?
3 or 4 minutes and it's a rush job. So apologies, let me break into your conversations because we are pressured this afternoon to cover stuff, but in many ways I hope the conversations that you're starting around your tables are the ones that will continue. And I know Stephen has a challenge for us at the end of this afternoon to continue what we're thinking about. But hopefully you've come up with some thoughts about what makes a great group for your age group. And hopefully you've realised that the thinking process behind it actually makes the programme that you plan so much more meaningful. It becomes more purposeful than accidental. Right, can I encourage you to pens down? Before I pass over to Stephen for some practical bits and pieces, one or two thoughts. Stephen's just talked about stages of faith. And some of us feel, oh well, we're at this stage and I sometimes see the kids way beyond me. And some of us might feel, well, the kids have got a long way to come before they experience some of the things that I've experienced. Can I encourage you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what stage of faith that you're at. Whatever group you're working with, whatever your own journey you've got, it doesn't matter your own stage of faith. What matters is that you try and understand where the young people and children are and where they might be going. You concentrate on your journey of faith as well. And sometimes you find that you can walk with the children and young people along exactly the same path and learn exactly the same things. And other times you might feel like you're encouraging them on. Come this way, come this way, come this way. It's wonderful over here. I've learned to hear God. Come, let's have a try. And other times you're like, can I just catch up with you? and that's fine, but just an awareness of where young people are at is a wonderful thing. I sent Stephen an article which Tonya had found the other day, which said about don't teach the right answers. And I know this is maybe a preference that some people like or don't like, but one of the things I think stops discipleship and stops growth is when you explain a story and then you tell the children exactly what it means and then you send them away. And the children have no opportunity to find their own meanings and their own lessons and explore the story for themselves. And so the story becomes a closed book when you finish. If you do like, here's feeding the 5,000, it means this, and it means this. And this is what Jesus was saying, and this is what Jesus meant. If you close the book at the end of it, the book remains closed. If you use language like, I wonder why Jesus did that, what do you think? I thought about this. This is one of the thoughts I've had about why did Jesus do that? Why did he have all this bread around? Maybe it was this, maybe it was that. Those kind of ways of teaching, if you like, open the book, for those who do open the book. They open the book and they pass the book to the child or the young person. And they take that story with all those wonders of questions that you've given them away, and they'll discover God in their own way. Keep the book open. Right, Steve.
You might have thought that my opening question, right back when we started, was a bit random, those who were here at that point. When I asked you, has anything unexpected happened today? Actually, it wasn't a random question, because the word I wrote on the right-hand page of my notes is expectation. I want us to be expecting amazing things to happen. I want us to be expecting that our children will lead us into places that we haven't been. I want us to be expecting that they will encounter Jesus in a way that we haven't. Now, there are some practical things we need to think about, and it's very easy to divorce the spiritual from the practical, but actually they go hand in hand, because the way we organise the things that we do will have an impact on the way that we're able to target those different stages. And just to add on to what Mike said, the thing I don't want you to go away thinking is that stage 1 faith isn't as good as stage 2 faith. They are all valid expressions of faith. They're just at different points on the journey. You're not saying that the A1 is better than the N1. Or the A74 is better than the M1. Yeah? It's just different points on the journey. You have to take the right route at the different points on the journey. They're not more valid or or less valid. They're just different. Yeah? So we need to, I just want to put that one back into the mix. Thinking practically then, so that was on the slide for what the implications. We need to think what the implications are across the whole age range, and the things that we do at one end of the age range will have implications for the things we do at the other end of the age range. The organisation of our groups. Now, hopefully most of you have seen the piece of paper I sent out with some thoughts on about how the groups are organised. This is just a quick summary of it. Our preschoolers, so the ones that haven't started at full morning nursery yet, so 0 to 3-ish, depends on when their birthdays are. Now actually in all of this I'm talking about school years. I'm going to be a little bit direct at this point, so forgive me. I think we really need to think about school years rather than birthdays, because I think the benefit of having a settled group for a whole year outweighs the problems of them changing everything at the same point. Are you with me? Now I've slightly staggered the group, so it's not quite Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3. So we get around that problem of transition. You know, when we don't want to give the kids a huge change here when they've already got a huge change at school. I think actually if we can model that transition here first, so move them a little bit early first, I think, well, that's my view. If you wish to disagree with me, please do. I am not the expert here. Yeah, I know you disagree. So anyway, the preschoolers. The middle box is about the things that happen during the weekdays. The right-hand box is about Sunday mornings. The green box is the things that are happening. The red box is the things that aren't happening. For those of you who are colourblind, I'll put it out the way through. So, preschoolers, we've got first steps, we've got mums and tots. I know mums and tots isn't a Christian group, it isn't a church group, but actually it is in lots of ways. It's about church in all the practical ways. It's about engaging in those relationships. We don't have to have a hymn in order for it to be an expression of church. Yeah? We don't have to have a worship song. We don't even need to pray out loud. So as I've included mums and tots in there, and actually I see that's one of the most strategic places that All Saints is at present, in mums and tots, rather than one of the least strategic. Sunday morning crash for that preschool age group. Their nature is not going to engage, even with the stuff that engages a 5-year-old. They're just not going to get it. We need to find ways to release mums with really tiny ones to engage with God. I remember the struggles as a vicar, as a curate, with young children. Engaging with God was almost nigh impossible. Especially when you're a new visitor to the church and you're worrying about what other people say. I would like to explore this as a possibility. Maybe not now, but I think we need to think about how we enable that group to have some of that experiential faith from people other than their parents. Because their parents haven't got that faith to share with them. Perhaps we can do that at a very, very early stage when they encounter church and come to church. And they can say, Mummy, I want to go to church. Because there's a nice lady there who sings songs with me. Yeah, when they're all just talking. That next stage, nursery to year 1. So that's sort of early Key Stage 1 sort of age range. The age range where they're really beginning to become little people, in my mind. Midweek, we actually don't have anything that engages that age range of kids midweek. I put a question mark there. I want to leave that question open. I've had various emails bouncing around since I sent this out. And different people have got different views on that. There's issues about leadership, there's issues about resources, there's issues about just being far too busy to do something else. But actually, as I went through this, I started to see gaps in what we had. And I think that's an interesting gap to, when you lose a tooth, you worry the gap. That's the gap I want to worry. Perhaps not come up with a solution now, but over the next few months and time, I want to worry that gap and think through what that gap might look like. And then, in terms of the Sunday school group, the littlest Sunday school group. So, those who already started at nursery, up and including those who are in year 1, and I came up with names, so I called them the Sunbeams. They might be called something else, but that's the shorthand. But that group was as a group in its own right on a Sunday morning, tying up with this during the week. So these two tie up, and these two tie up. And if you remember from that document I said, the model I want is like an overlapping circle. They ought to have drawn those as overlapping boxes, actually. I don't want them to be the same thing. I don't want creche to simply be first steps on a Sunday. And I don't want first steps to be creche on a Wednesday. They need to be different, but they need to interact with one another. They need to engage with one another. Moving further up the age range, sort of the Y2 to Y5. And I know these might not line up with the boundaries that we're looking at present, but you know, I think we need to have this conversation maybe beyond today about where these boundaries sit. So midweek we have Young Saints, and I'll come to it in a minute. I want to send everybody away thinking about how these aims, how these dreams for our children actually become reality in the groups. So I'll now make a list. I don't want Tower Gang and Young Saints simply to be youth groups. I don't want them to be groups where the kids come and have a good time. I want them to be groups where the kids can come and discover a little bit more about how much God loves them. However, whatever level that is, it might be a very, very tiny bit of a particular group. That may be where a group sees its call and its drive. But I want to see that faith being built in every situation. We are a people of faith. Mark, you cannot, I think Jackie said, if you cut me in half, I hope you'd see the word Christian. I don't want our groups to not look like groups that are being Christian. They might have different flavours, we might have different sizes of those letters, but I want all of the groups to be enabling children to encounter the love of God in whatever way that is. And then on Sunday morning, that same group, that same age range, and I call them torches because it just felt like it was moving on from something to a bit brighter, or a bit dimmer, I don't know, depending on how you look at it. And then the sort of the Year 6 plus group. So we've got Tower Gang, and this is another whole we've got, and I know we've had various conversations about splitting our Sunday school on Sunday mornings into 3 groups. So actually we take this older age group and are able to do things with them that are, well, beyond our Y2s, or beyond our 8-year-olds. I've seen now, I look at Joel and I look at Joshua, and there are things you could do with Joshua that you wouldn't be able to do with Joel. It's crackers to have them both in the same Sunday school group. Crackers to have them both in the same children group. If we can find a way to make this work, if we can find the leadership to make this work effectively, I really think this is the way that we need to move forward. That's the whole at present, that's all we need to fill. I don't know if those of you who are here, we had a Youth and Children's Summit 3 years ago, was it? I think it was. And it was at that point that we identified the gap that now is filled with Tower Gang. We looked at our children ageing and said we need to move on to this next phase. And I want to do the same thing. Because actually, what does this whole look like? We're increasingly a church that have teenagers. And I don't think that some of the things that we're offering to our 11-year-olds are the things that we need to be offering to our 15-year-olds. And those 15-year-olds are coming. They're coming at a rate of 24 hours a day, and nothing on this planet will stop that. Sure, a baseball bat nails it. We need that whole to be guiding our thinking as we look forward. We need that whole to encourage us, to spur us on. Because you know what? I don't want to get there and discover that at the point where our kids need us to be able to ask some questions. Mark asked me, what does a church that accepts a questioning faith look like? I haven't got a clue, but I want to make sure that we've thought about that before the kids start asking those questions. Or as the kids start asking those questions. I want us to have the resources in place to be able to meet that in the same way as we did with Tower Gang. Where would we be now if Mike and Alvin and the others hadn't taken on that challenge and started with Tower Gang? We wouldn't have Brandon and Emily growing the way they've grown this summer. It wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't be part of the church family. They'd gone. And how many years would it be until they were back in a place where their faith could continue that journey? So those are the things that... There are some holes in here. There are some things we talked about. There are some age ranges. I think, as I put in that letter, I think it's important that people are working with the same age group. I think it would be very hard to say be engaged in Tower Gang as a leader here and then trying to engage those children. If this is it's about real relationships, then the way they're going to have a real relationship with Jesus is if they've got real relationships with the leaders as well. And if it's about relationships, then I think those relationships need to build in Roy's mark. Sorry.
My only question is, and this is a question that I would have for the Sunday school teachers already on a Sunday, what are you going to give your leaders so that they aren't always just giving?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a big question.
Sorry, Mark, can you just repeat that again, please?
If you're not careful, you end up taking your leaders, you're busy during the week doing stuff, but then you take them out on Sunday to do the other stuff, and they need somewhere where they get stuff put in.
We try to do it alternate, so we're not out every week. So like, if there's two of us leading, usually I'm out once a month. Because, you know, if we do it alternate, that's how we try to make it work.
By the time you're out for summer holidays, it usually works out that you Sunday school about 5 times a year.
But often, lots of times you're not in. The level at which stuff is being pitched is not at the level that people are leading.
Yes. But again, when it's morning worship, the idea is that you're out for one morning worship, you're not out for the next one. I hear what you're saying, that's there as well.
And I think that's where...
If you're only missing 5 or 6 morning worships a year, you're actually missing 5 or 6 morning worship, adult morning worships out of 12.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think at that point the question then, I'd sort of throw it back the other way. What are the resources that you as leaders need in order to be able to grow in your faith and not lose out from having missed those? And I would point to things like the website. I haven't had a sermon, haven't been updated since before the summer holidays, but that job will get done. There's a chance to listen in again on some of those sermons. Within the next few weeks, we're going to have seminars up from New Wine there for people to listen to for the last 5 or 6 years on a special dedicated website for the church family. So there's ways to engage with that outside of Sunday, and I think that would be one of my answers is about making sure that the leaders here,
as well as what else do we need to do.
But I think we need to encourage one another in situations like this. I think we need to get together. I want to encourage the leaders in the group to get together and learn together and pray together. Don't just get together to plan, get together to pray, get together to learn, get together to study together so that you grow. And I know that sounds like more stuff, but I think that will deal with some of the things that are missing. Is that yeah.
It's not me to answer the question, it's the leaders.
How do other people feel?
I agree with what Jackie said in a way, it's taking responsibility for yourself. And I know myself, if I need more from God and I need space, then I'll just do it myself. And, you know, good spring harvest, and I volunteer to work there with children as well. But I also try and get some me time, because that sort of keeps you working another year. But I take on board what you're saying, Mark, because sometimes it is hard work.
The new one just gives me that
top
up. But there's also, to be fair, a whole host, it's more fun to get that. There's a whole host of other learning, encouraging opportunities that we don't make most of. So there are new ones training days, there are usually nice stuff that we miss out on. But we're not too good to go and do it.
But the problem is with those as well sometimes, when you're working 4 days a week,
Yeah.
you've got your own family as well.
That's
and Sunday school, you know, it's just Saturday weekend, you know, out of a weekend, but like it takes time management, isn't it?
Yeah.
The first thing to do is time management.
So let me bring you back to here. There's one hole on there that we've already talked about filling, and we were going to fill from September, and we're going to move on to try and fill from January, which is this one, which is splitting the Sunday school into 3 groups. Honestly, those who are involved in that, what do we need to make that happen?
We need 6 people who are willing to be the second adult in the group. That's the minimum.
Have we got 6 people who will lead?
We've got 6 leaders.
So who are the Sunday leaders? Who are the ones who are leading the leaders?
There's 3 there.
3.
We haven't discussed leadership with Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa will be the second one.
I don't mind the second one.
Yeah, but also to use that as an opportunity
Right,
Never mind planned to be doing Sunday school.
right, so, but I need to know it.
Yes, we can have that conversation.
So actually, we've got the people that we need to make that reality. Now we need a third venue.
We discussed that.
So I was going to say the Tower Gang room is there on Sunday morning. We're okay. As long as we've got the way we want it. It's the Tower Gang. I mean, it's their room. It will be that age range. Very quickly, it's just on 6 o'clock. I've got 5 more minutes I need to talk about on the last thing. What do people think about those age ranges? You know, very practically, very quickly. Do those age ranges work? And I know there might be a transitional stage where we deal with the kids who aren't in the right place yet but are a part of the group already. I'm not suggesting we kick out a child who's in year 1 who's already at young sex.
Can I suggest that it's worth looking at a pattern either of mirroring the key stages, or as we now take 20% of the church, maybe 30% of the kids to new wine, mirroring the new wine ages. So that at least what we can do is mirroring one or the other of the frameworks that the kids, a significant proportion of the kids, or from school point of view, all of the kids, deal with, rather than having a third. That almost matches the new wine, not quite. Or we keep the simplicity of doing key stages.
But if that's what works for us, it doesn't matter. I mean, I would say that I agree with Stephen when he said, you know, let's not do the same transitions all at the same time. So particularly the one between year 6 and year 7.
I think Josh has really benefited from doing the transition to Tower Gang a year earlier.
That one particularly, I would agree with.
It's like so I would say, it's like we've got so come to young sex who aren't ready to
Sorry.
Yes, but what I'm saying is I'm not sure how relevant the stuff to mirror new wine is, because it's a week out of the year. And it's not, you know, if that's the structure that works for us in terms of what the weekdays are, then I think it's more important that we are consistent with ourselves in terms of our groups and things, because we don't want children coming on a Wednesday, say to mums and tots, we're going in 2 different directions.
Thanks, Lisa. That's fine, thank you. Sorry, we're overrun. I was going to walk to them. Thank you, Lisa. Sorry, overrun.
I think as long as we're consistent with ourselves, then when they go to new wine, that's something completely different. It's not, but it is something completely different.
But I'm also aware that you split kids who are used to being with each other into groups of 100, 200.
But that's a good
But we're going to have that follow-up. Unless we adopt exactly the new wine, and we can't adopt the new wine one because they've got more age ranges than we can fit. Yeah.
We've got a lot more groups, like we've got Pebbles, Gems.
Any other thoughts about the age ranges? Do we think that's at least a place to start in terms of conversation and in terms of looking at how those groups are organised? Has anybody sat there going,
The only one I want to drop down is year 2. Nursery is year 1, year 2.
well, it's nursery reception year 1.
That's a massive developmental rate.
That's nursery reception year 1. So that's 3 years. That's 3 school years. That's year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. So that's 4 school years.
Yes, I forgot that. It's aspect reception.
What I would say is
That great children stage then.
First Steps has an overlap with that first red box.
Yes.
The transitions here are going to be fuzzy. I don't want to end up with a situation where we say, oh, you go to nursery. Come on.
Yeah,
you want
those kids are going to, some of the nursery kids are going to come into some big ones to Sunbeams anyway, so if Sunbeams is pretty much what the early Sunbeams are living with.
How do you call it Sunbeams with an R?
Sorry?
What? S-O-N?
Yeah. With an O.
None of the names are going to be fixed, they were just being played.
I quite like it.
As far as our numbers across those groups at the moment, does that make sense, or does that mean we'll have like 2 in one group? And 8 in another?
Bring my laptop and numbers in front of
I
me.
think it balances out over the course of a few years. We might end up with some smaller groups and some bigger groups. But I just think there's a bulge going through at present.
Yeah, well, and I think we should reflect that though. I think if we're not careful, we're spending people's precious hours in the week, and of course it's always worth it for the one or two that turn up, but it's
No.
not, you know, and it will be disheartening for somebody if, like, well, I only get 3 in my group anyway, and one of them's away this week.
Yeah.
That's bad, you know, so I think this all needs to fit who we have and where we have them. And that means it might well change every year as our bowls go through, or as we have, because it won't be fair for somebody again if they have 10 in their group.
For me, the really important thing is actually that by next summer, so a year from now, that first red box in the sort of nursery to year 1 midweek is filled. Because at the moment we have Scarlett and Harry and Adam and Maisie and Olivia and
We've got another bulletin. I think we need to pass this past the list of the kids that we got, the ages that we've got. We've got the spreadsheet to do that at home. Just haven't had time to do that.
I think that it should be that way round. We're small enough for it to be that way round.
Yes.
We're not a big church with 500 people. You set your boundaries and whoever
All
says
it
that.
takes is a couple of children off and you've prepared enough there.
Yes.
And that's very
We need to make sure that those boundaries are viable, I agree, and live lightly with that transition and with that transition. And maybe on a Sunday morning those transitions do look slightly different.
And I would definitely like 14 plus being in the service.
Yes.
The fear that like 5 groups of possibly 10 people are out. That's half the congregation. I mean, let's all age worship if we're doing that, which is. But no, I mean, I will always, you know, kind of fly my old age flag, which I've done for many years in some ways. But you know, if we've got midweek groups happening where they're getting their teaching, in theory, adults have their midweek groups where they're getting their teaching. We celebrate on Sunday morning with everyone willing to go to Christmas.
So the problem with that is at first Young Saints, isn't that? Young Saints is a different balance. It's not, for one remember, the equivalent of Sunday school midweek. So if Young Saints was the Christian youth group, for want of a better way of putting it, it was weighted that way, then that would be fine. But if Young Saints is still, I don't like the language, but if it's the youth group with the God's lot, then that's not enough teaching for our 7 to 11-year-olds. And there has to be a point to do some age-relevant stuff for the groups. That's
but that's part of what we talked about this afternoon, is it's discipleship, is our, you know, what we do to grow the faith of these young people. So that is completely relevant for Young Saints, and that should be age-relevant, faith-relevant.
Yes, but it's a different weight and a different proportion and a different...
It's
what you want is
a
your
drip
business.
feed is Young Saints, isn't it? It's more of a drip feed.
But actually, I want. I'd love to see all of the groups really go back to first principles and think again about the whole remit of what they're doing. If at this point I'm going to turn into vicar and I'm going to do something I don't often do, and I'm going to get a bit directive. You know, vicars aren't supposed to be directive, so Mark, if you could just close your ears for a minute and don't tell the bishop this. There is responsibility ahead, and I'm going to lay it on the line. I need from today 3 things. First thing I need from you, as the leader of this church family, is I need your commitment. I need you to say we're going to go along this journey with these children and we're going to see where God wants us to go. We all come to this with our own ideas, we all come to this with our own biases, with our own histories, but I want your commitment to see where God is going to take all of these groups. And it may be at the end of this that First Steps and Tower Gang and Young Saints and Sunbeams and Torches and Lasers, whatever we decide to call them, look radically different to how they look now. Because actually that's what God wants. I want your commitment to be open to that possibility and to go back to your constituencies, go back to your groups, go back to your planning again. Not to rewrite this term's planning, but when you're working through this term's planning, be saying to yourself, have we got that vision? Are we trying to engage our kids in our real relationship with Jesus? Are we trying to engage our kids in a real relationship with one another? Are we trying to engage our kids in a real relationship with the world? I want your commitment to be open rather than closed. And I'm not suggesting that any of you are closed, but I just want you to have that hold lightly to what is, so that you might be able to take hold of what might be. Is that a better way of putting it? Or does that make no sense at all? The second thing I need is I need you to go through a process of working out the aims and the visions for your group. I want, and I will say I want never gets announced, but I want eventually 2, 4, 6, 8 pieces of paper. No more than A4. If it doesn't fit onto A4 at 12 point, throw it away. Try again. I want aims and visions for your group. I want to see what God has put on your heart for the young people that He has given you the care of. Because this matters. This is important. If you have those aims and visions in front of you, then you've got a skeleton on which you can start to build something. If everybody's going in different directions, everybody will be going in different directions. But I think if you allow the Holy Spirit to lead you and to come up with that framework, that then means that everything that we've talked about today can become a part of the DNA of your group. Now, the DNA of Young Saints isn't going to be the DNA of First Steps. They're going to look different. But if you've got that DNA, you go back and you say, actually, do you know what? As we're looking at this church, we haven't got any blah. And that's part of our DNA. We need to make sure that that's part. It gives you a touchstone to be able to then be accountable for what the groups are doing. And I want you to give the children opportunities to make us jealous. I want you to be bold enough to let the children fly and tell us what it looks like. Because we've got some grown-ups in this church family that have never flown. And perhaps the only way that they're going to fly is when the baby bird kicks them out of the nest. Please, I need 3 things from you. I need that commitment to be open to what God might want you to do, and the commitment to love the children and young people that God has given you. I need you to have that, go through that process of working out those aims and visions. It might sound a bit formulaic, but that process will allow you to have that conversation together that will mean that everybody's on board. Everybody's on board. If everybody knows what the aims and visions are, then those groups will motor, I assure you. And I need you to give opportunities to your kids, your children, your young people to make the church family jealous with the stories that you share. And that means we need to make sure that there are stories to share. Not just, we've made this, but I prayed for so-and-so and they were healed. James, Lisa's left. James wants to pray for his granddad. We prayed for his granddad. His granddad's a lot better, unexpectedly. I'm jealous. I want to be jealous of our kids. I want to go where they can lead us. So that's what I need from you. I need those things. And actually, number 1, I'm asking for today. Number 2, I'm asking for by Christmas. And number 3, I want to be a regular part of the life of All Saints by Easter. And I've probably got 4, 5 and 6 that I haven't thought about yet. I don't usually do that, but actually I want to charge you in the Lord. I really feel that this is what we need to do at this moment in time to really see our young people and children fly and to lead the rest of us off the cliff. They need us. They need us to help them. They need us to walk with them. They need us so that they can say, do you know what? Jesus used me to pray for my leader. I can do that. They need us so that they can have a real relationship with Jesus. They need us so that they can have real relationships with each other. They need us so that they can have a real relationship with the world that they're going to end up in, one way or another. Shall we stand and pray?